A single question can destroy an entire persona. And in this moment, you're about to see exactly how fast years of branding, confidence, and tough guy rhetoric can collapse when confronted by someone who knows the truth. Not the TV version, not the political version, the version built in dust, sweat, and the weight of soldiers depending on you. Because this showdown wasn't about politics at all. It was about memory, identity, and whether a man who built his career telling America what the military should be could still defend who he used to be. What unfolded next wasn't a clash of ideology. It was a clash between who someone claims to be and who they actually were when it mattered most.
In that experience, and it's that experience that I want to transport us back into time, back to Lieutenant Hegseth and Lieutenant Crow. There are a lot of things that make a leader and that make a unit effective. Would you say that unit cohesion is important?
Unit cohesion amongst many is very important, yes, sir.
It's an important element. And part of that is making sure that all members of your unit felt included in that team, correct?
Far more important that every member of that unit felt capable to do the mission and united in that mission.
But that they were included and felt part of the team as well.
I wouldn't use the word inclusion, sir, but yes, they were cohering as a team, yes.
And that you reduce tension and infighting and points of tension between your platoon members so that you can focus on the mission. That was a part of the regular job.
Absolutely. That's why I've said that our diversity is our strength is the single dumbest phrase in military history.
And words are
our
important.
Unity is our strength. And
Words.
so unity amongst members, despite differences of backgrounds, race, whatever that is.
And I agree with you on that.
Together on a mission.
And words, part of that is words are important and setting the tone is important, correct? When you're a leader.
All aspects of leadership, mostly leading by example.
Did you ever
and
tell them
also
your
giving
political
clear
affiliation?
guidance.
Did you ever tell your platoon members your political affiliation?
We certainly discussed lots of topics, and I'm sure my political affiliation.
Did you ever ask them theirs?
No, their political affiliation was never a concern to me.
Because it's important that everybody feel included and that people weren't excluded, correct? That would be
My
antithetical to
platoon,
leadership.
I'm sure my platoon contained Republicans, Democrats, and Independents, and I had no idea what their affiliation was.
Okay, that was actually my next question, so I appreciate you answering that. You led your unit in a counterinsurgency environment and you interacted with civilians, correct?
Interacted with members of the civilian population, sure.
Yep. And you were, in fact, a COIN instructor, a counterinsurgency instructor, correct?
In Afghanistan in 2011 and 2012, I was the senior counterinsurgency instructor.
And you signed off on a manual. There's actually a counterinsurgency manual that you signed off on and helped create. And your name is on that manual, correct?
We were a part of creating a lot of content at the COIN Academy, yes.
Do you remember this portion of the manual? It says, if you've killed two innocents, you've set yourself back more than you've moved forward. Do you still agree with that?
I would have to take a look at the manual, but obviously no one in warfare is seeking to kill innocents.
Okay. Because it's important to show why we're different from the enemy. Because we're not the enemy, right? We're different from our adversary. Would you agree with that? We have different morals and different values.
We are not the enemy, sir.
We have different morals and we have different values than the enemy.
We have a code, a uniform code of military justice.
So the answer to that is
inside our
yes.
formations that
You're not trying to compare us to Al-Qaeda and ISIS, are you? We're different.
I know the code of the United States military and army that I signed
You
up
can't
for.
tell me
God
whether we're
raised my
different?
right hand.
You're not willing to say we're
Of course
different?
we're different.
Okay,
I
thank
mean,
you.
It's absurd.
That's why I'm trying to reconcile the fact that we learned many of the same lessons as platoon leaders about unit cohesion, making sure that people were included, that we didn't ask people's political affiliation, that we interacted respectfully with civilian populations, that what a leader says matters, that the tone you set matters, that we are not the enemy, that we are different from them, we lead differently, we have different morals. How can I reconcile that experience and those lessons learned from Lieutenant Hegseth to now Secretary Hegseth, where you say things like what you just saw here, making us equivalent on the same standards as our adversaries, doing the same things that ISIS and Al-Qaeda would do? How can you possibly reconcile that? I can't. And just the other day down at Fort Bragg in our beloved 82nd Airborne Division, sitting there while we politicize the military and pull our paratroopers into politics, booing elected officials, booing politicians with whom you disagree. It's antithetical to our values, and you, sir,
Gentlemen,
have changed.
time's expired. Chair, and I recognize
And for the
gentleman.
first time, the mask didn't crack. It shattered. Crow didn't start with accusations or performance. He started with a time machine, dragging both of them back to the days when they were simply two lieutenants, two infantry platoon leaders responsible for the lives of young soldiers in a chaotic counterinsurgency environment. No politics, no cameras, no talking points, just leadership, discipline, and values that every officer knows are non-negotiable. Crow reminded him of that world gently, almost respectfully. He talked about cohesion, the glue that keeps a unit alive, the one thing every leader must protect at all costs. He asked whether cohesion mattered, and he got a nervous, uneasy yes. Not because the question was hard, but because of what was coming next, because then Crow asked about the tone a leader sets. That words matter, that you don't divide your platoon with politics, that you don't pick favorites, that you don't ask soldiers to reveal their affiliations or beliefs because mission comes first, not tribal identity. And suddenly, the confident commentator became something else, hesitant, defensive, almost irritated that Crow was framing leadership in terms of mutual respect and inclusion. He pushed back on the word itself, refusing to acknowledge that inclusion is the foundation of cohesion, not a political slogan. Every veteran watching knew exactly what Crow was doing. He wasn't asking a culture war question. He was asking a lieutenant's question. Do your soldiers feel like part of the team or not? Every officer knows the answer. But instead of grounding himself in experience, he drifted into pundit territory. Talking points, half answers, that subtle dismissal of the values he once lived by. Crow noticed. Everyone noticed, and that was only the beginning, because then Crow reached into the past and pulled out something Hegseth hoped everyone forgot: his own counterinsurgency manual, a document he helped create, a guide he once used to teach other officers how to survive and win ethically. The manual has a famous principle: if you harm innocent civilians, you lose legitimacy and set your mission back further than any tactical gain. Crow quoted the line one of them wrote, and the other lived. And Hegseth suddenly couldn't remember it. Not the principle, not the context, not even whether he agreed with the basic idea that civilians shouldn't be harmed in war. Crow wasn't exposing ignorance. He was exposing distance. Distance between the man who once believed in discipline and restraint, and the man now shaped by political incentives that reward outrage, not expertise. But what came next was the moment the internet replayed 1,000 times. Crow asked a question so basic, so fundamental to American military identity, that no veteran should ever hesitate. Are we different from the extremists we fight? It should have been immediate. It should have been instinctive. It should have been the easiest yes of his career. Instead, hesitation, evasion, a rambling detour into procedure and bureaucracy, a vague, almost confused dance around the answer. The kind of discomfort you only see when someone knows the truth but can't say it because it clashes with the persona they've built. Crow had to drag the answer out word by word, like pulling a splinter. And by the time he finally forced a weak yes, the damage was done. Not because he said something wrong, but because he couldn't say something right without struggling. That's what shook viewers the most, because this wasn't about political leanings. It wasn't about the hearing. It wasn't even about their disagreement. It was about whether the values you build your identity on, discipline, morality, leadership, are still in you when the world starts rewarding you for abandoning them. Crow didn't raise his voice. He didn't insult. He didn't grandstand. He didn't need to. He simply held up a mirror and waited. And in the reflection, Hegseth didn't see the lieutenant he once was. He saw the pundit he had become. And that's when the shift in the room became impossible to ignore. Crow wasn't done. He moved from leadership values to something deeper, the difference between enforcing cohesion and exploiting division. He talked about paratroopers being pulled into political cheering and booing, not because the troops themselves did anything wrong, but because leadership increasingly frames military loyalty through a political lens. And when Hegseth tried to defend himself, he stumbled straight into Crow's point. He complained about political reactions at a base, unintentionally confirming that politics had seeped into spaces once protected by discipline, professionalism, and shared identity. The irony was brutal. The very thing Crow said was happening, Hegseth demonstrated in real time. That was the moment people online claimed Crow was no longer debating him. He was diagnosing him. Because the question Crow raised wasn't, "Why do you disagree with me?" It was, "Why are you abandoning everything you once said mattered?" And that hit harder than any political argument could. Crow closed the exchange by contrasting who they were as officers with who Hegseth chooses to be now. It wasn't about policy. It wasn't about political tribes. It wasn't about loyalty tests. It was about whether someone who once preached the values of military cohesion now actively undermines them in public because it sells better. Whether someone who once trained soldiers to respect civilian populations now uses rhetoric that blurs moral lines. Whether someone who once wrote doctrine that emphasized restraint now embraces commentary that celebrates the opposite. Crow wasn't exposing hypocrisy. He was exposing transformation. A complete inversion of values. He positioned himself not as an opponent, but as a witness. Someone who remembers the version of Hegseth that existed before politics reshaped him. And when that version didn't appear, he let the silence speak for itself. That's why this moment exploded online. Not because of the heat, but because of the contrast. Because millions of viewers saw a man unable to defend the values he claims to represent when asked by someone who shared the same battlefield lessons. And maybe that's the real story here, not the argument, but the gap between memory and reality, between identity and performance, between who someone used to be and who they choose to be now. Because in leadership, true leadership, your values don't only matter when they're convenient. They matter when they're tested. And in this moment, they were tested, and they failed. That if this breakdown helped you understand the deeper stakes behind this exchange, the importance of moral clarity, cohesion, and leadership inside institutions that hold this country together. Make sure you like the video, subscribe for more deep dive breakdowns, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Your voice drives the next story.